All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we're looking at Chronicles of the Future.
Interesting.
It's this diary written by a guy, Paul Amadeus,
Okay.
and he basically time travels, I guess you could say.
Time travel.
Yeah, but get this, he's in a coma in 1921 and wakes up in the year 3906.
Wow. That's quite a jump.
Right. I figured this one would be right up your alley, with all the conspiracy theories and mysteries you're always into.
Oh, absolutely. Time travel is it's a pretty big can of worms. Lots of theories out there.
Exactly. And this book doesn't just, drop him into any random future.
Oh.
It's a future that's been totally shaped by, global events, societal changes, even, get this, extraterrestrial contact.
Now you've got my attention. So how does this time travel even happen? Is there an explanation?
Okay, so picture this. Paul wakes up in this super futuristic hospital.
I'm picturing it.
He's completely disoriented, can't understand anything anyone's saying, can't sleep a wink. Everyone around him seems, I don't know, just super peaceful,
Oh.
which is kind of weird considering.
Yeah, I can imagine waking up in a strange place not knowing the language.
Right, but here's the real kicker. He's not in his own body.
Wait, what? Not his own body?
Yeah, he somehow ends up inhabiting the body of this guy named Andreas.
Okay, now this is getting really interesting. So who is this Andreas?
Andreas, well, he died in a coma in 3906. Apparently, right at the same time Paul went into his coma back in 1921.
So their consciousness is somehow, synced up?
That's what the book says. It calls it a metaphysical phenomenon. Not reincarnation, but like a mind-blowing body swap.
A body swap across time. That's a new one for me.
I know, right? And it gets even weirder.
Weirder. How so?
There's this council of super smart people in the future.
A council?
Yeah, and they apparently understand this whole metaphysical phenomenon.
So they've seen this before.
They even have a protocol for it. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Now that's a conspiracy theory I could get behind. A secret council in the future dealing with time-traveling coma patients.
I know, right? It's wild. So Andreas had this best friend, Stefan, and he steps in to kind of help Paul adjust to his new life.
So like a future life coach,
Exactly.
guiding him through the complexities of 3906.
But here's where my, conspiracy-loving brain kicks in.
Let's hear it.
Does this explanation, the whole council and protocol thing, make the story more believable? Or does it just, add another layer of mystery?
That's a good question. It could be a clever way to ground the story in some kind of logic.
Right.
Or it could be a misdirection, something to make us question what's really going on.
Exactly. Are we supposed to just accept this council at face value? Or is there something more to them?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It plays right into our fascination with the unknown, with those unanswered questions.
Totally. But okay, before we go too far down the rabbit hole, let's get back to Paul, or I guess Andreas now. He starts documenting all these events that led to this crazy future.
Oh, so he's like a historian of the future.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And get this, he describes the 21st century, our time, as being totally consumed by political polarization. Sound familiar?
Well, it certainly resonates with the current climate, doesn't it?
Right. It's a little eerie, actually.
You said he time traveled from 1921, right? To think he'd see such a parallel in the future.
Oh, right. And it gets even crazier. This polarization eventually leads to, a devastating nuclear war in 2309.
Whoa, so the book actually predicts a nuclear war.
Well, not predicts exactly. More like presented as a possibility, a consequence of extreme division.
A cautionary tale, perhaps.
Exactly. And knowing your fascination with space, guess what else happens?
What?
Humanity colonizes Mars.
Wow, finally.
But then there's an ecological disaster.
Oh no, not Mars too.
Right. It makes you think, are we doomed to repeat our mistakes? Even on other planets?
That's a question for the ages, isn't it? The human capacity for both innovation and destruction.
It's a lot to ponder. But wait, there's more.
More.
Paul also describes the rise of a centralized world government, no more individual nations, and no private property either.
Whoa, a complete overhaul of society as we know it.
It's super utopian, almost too good to be true.
No countries, no possessions. What drives people then?
That's where it gets really interesting. They've discovered this thing called the samit.
The samit. What's that?
It's like a universal consciousness, something akin to, I don't know, a godlike entity. And humanity somehow is connected to it.
So like a collective consciousness.
Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
And this connection is made possible through something called the nil bridge. It's described as A spiritual awakening that emerges in 3382.
A spiritual awakening on a global scale. That's pretty mind-blowing.
I know, it's like all those conspiracy theories about hidden spiritual realities, suddenly they don't seem so far-fetched anymore.
It definitely makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if there's more to our existence than we realize?
Right. And how does this all tie into the world government and the lack of, well, everything? Is this Samit calling the shots?
That's a question for our next deep dive because I think we're out of time for today. But I'm definitely hooked.
Same here. This Chronicles of the Future is a total mind trip. Okay, so we're back in this future world. They've got the Samit, no poverty, no war, basically a utopia, right?
Yeah.
But I gotta ask, is there a catch?
Yeah. Well, yeah, utopias always make you wonder, don't they? Like, what's the trade-off? What are they giving up to have all this? And remember, we're seeing this through Paul's eyes.
Right, the guy from 1921.
Exactly. A guy who's basically experiencing constant culture shock. He's trying to figure out this whole new reality, and it's messing with his head.
So does the book give any hints that things might not be as perfect as they seem?
Yeah.
I mean, you know me, always looking for that conspiracy angle.
Well, Paul does mention some tension among the artists.
Art.
Yeah. He says they can access the samit, the source of, ultimate truth and beauty.
Right, the Samit.
But they're still struggling to express themselves, create something meaningful.
That's interesting. If the Samit is supposed to be the source of all truth and beauty, wouldn't art just be a perfect reflection of it?
You'd think so, right?
Where's the room for individual interpretation? Or like that creative struggle we usually find so compelling in art?
That's the paradox, isn't it? Even in this super advanced society, connected to this higher consciousness, the human soul is still yearning for something more.
They've got all this peace and harmony, but maybe are they missing that spark? That, I don't know, the individuality?
Maybe. Paul seems to think so. He observed that people in 3906, they lack that drive we often associate with a dynamic personality.
Okay, so they're connected to the Samit. They've got this utopian society. But what's it actually like living there? How do they get around? What do they eat? The everyday stuff.
Well, technology's everywhere. Paul describes this super advanced transportation system, but even he doesn't fully understand it. Imagine being able to travel, instantly.
No traffic jams.
Exactly. And as for food, it's just there, tailored to each person's needs. No more grocery shopping or cooking.
Okay, I'm sold. But what about love and relationships? Is that still a thing in this Samit world?
Paul's relationship with a woman named Sylvia sheds some light on that.
Sylvia.
Yeah. They have a deep connection, but it's not like, romantic love as we understand it. It's more about mutual respect and understanding without possessiveness or jealousy.
Huh. So like pure harmony.
You could say that. But Paul, coming from our world, he finds it a bit, strange at first.
I can imagine. It almost sounds, I don't know, a little boring, to be honest.
That's a valid point. Does this level of harmony come at the cost of, emotional depth? Paul seems to think so.
It's like they traded passion and struggle for peace and stability. But doesn't that lead to, conformity? Everyone just going with the flow.
It's an interesting question. And the book doesn't shy away from exploring these contradictions. It makes us think about what we truly value. What does a good life even mean?
This is definitely a lot to think about. So what happens to Paul? Does he adjust to this new life? Or does he want to go back to his own time?
Well, that's what we'll find out in the final part of our deep dive into Chronicles of the Future.
Okay, so back to Chronicles of the Future for the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We left Paul in this utopian future, plugged into the Samit, technology out of this world, but still a man stuck out of time. Where does his story go from here?
One thing that makes this book so fascinating, especially for someone like you always digging into mysteries, it doesn't give you all the answers. It's more about the journey, exploring, figuring things out along the way. Paul's experience, it really forces him to look at his own beliefs about life, happiness, even what's real,
Talk about an existential crisis, right? Waking up in a future you don't recognize, a body that's not even yours. I mean, the book doesn't sugarcoat the impact of all that. He feels lonely, lost, even guilty about taking over this other guy's life.
It's a transformation story, really, inside and out. And this is where things get, philosophical. Paul starts thinking about consciousness itself. Like, if his mind can travel to the future while his body's in a coma, what does that even mean?
Right. It's like all those fringe theories about astral projection, the power of the mind. maybe they're not so crazy after all.
The book dives into those ideas. Paul has these deep talks with the wise men about the Samit, the Nile Bridge, how humanity evolved. They say the Nile Bridge, that connection to the Samit, it wasn't a sudden thing. It happened over centuries. People slowly letting go ego and stuff, embracing a more, holistic way of being.
So not like, boom, enlightened for everyone overnight.
Exactly. More like a gradual process, a collective shift. Makes you wonder, are we headed in that direction now? Is humanity evolving towards that kind of awakening?
That's a big question, right? But the book doesn't predict our future. It just shows what our consciousness might be capable of. One detail I found really wild, though. People in 3906, they can't lie.
Yeah, it's key to their society. No money, no possessions, so there's no greed, no need to cheat or steal. Their whole system's based on honor and reputation, so honesty is essential.
Wow. Imagine no lying politicians, no corporations screwing people over, no fake news.
Sounds pretty idealistic, right?
Almost too good to be true.
Maybe, but it shows a totally different way of living. Authenticity and integrity above everything else makes you think about the less than ideal parts of our own society.
So what's the message here? Is Chronicles of the Future a warning, a prophecy, or just a good story?
I think it's a mix of all three. Warns us about unchecked ambition, extreme ideologies, offers a possible path for human consciousness if we choose to evolve, and definitely makes us question what we think we know about happiness, progress, the whole meaning of life thing.
This deep dive has been a wild ride for sure. Chronicles of the Future, it's the kind of book that sticks with you. It challenges you to see things differently, to imagine possibilities we might not even dream of.
It's a reminder to think critically, keep asking questions, and stay open to the unknown. Maybe someday we'll wake up in a future that blows our minds.
That's a thought I'll be chewing on for a while. And for our listeners, if you're intrigued by Paul Amadeus' story, Chronicles of the Future is easy to find online. Dive in, explore, let your mind wander. You never know what you might discover. Until next time, keep questioning, keep searching, and keep those conspiracy theories coming.